Alright, so even though you guys seem to have a penchant for the worst movies in my collection, you like to really hear me rail on some movies, I'm gonna do another installment of some of the best movies in my collection. Let's go! What's up, everybody? It's Nick here from the Lost River Drive-In, and today I want to go over some of the best movies in my collection. Volume 2 of this one. Although it wasn't as popular as the worst movies, I'm here to do it. I'm going to keep this going as long as you guys want to see it. And without further ado, let's get right into it with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, if you guys remember in the first installment, I said I was going to try to be talking about movies that are just technically great. Like, you look at them, whether it's acting, whether it's directing, score, and their place in history, and you go, yeah, that's just a really good movie, even if it's not for you. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of those movies. It was a pioneer. It came before Michael. It came before Jason and Freddy, and a lot of people seem to forget that, because it is a different movie. It's not so much your straight-up slasher movie. But this movie and what Tobe Hooper did with this movie is legendary. It really is. Now, this is coming from someone that is a bigger fan of the '03 remake, which to some is sacrilege. But I'm not blind. I'm not deaf. I understand that this movie, on a technical level, is super important to horror and really film in general. And it's a great movie. Look, this movie is uncomfortable. It's not an easy watch. It's not something that you're going to watch. You're going to go, oh my gosh, like that was just so impactful, like emotionally. I hope they all win Oscars. No, but it's going to burrow into your skin. And you're not going to walk away from this movie not being affected. And that alone shows that this movie accomplished what it set out to do, which is terrify you in different ways. Not necessarily the jump scare way, but up here. And this movie does that. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the greatest horror movies ever made, and I just don't think it's up for debate. Now, this one might ruffle some feathers, but I'm gonna stand by this. The Conjuring. Look, you guys know that I prefer The Conjuring too, but The Conjuring is a scarier film, bar none. Still the scariest theater experience I've ever had in my life. Look, whether you love or hate the kind of paranormal, whether you think Ed and Lorraine Warren were total hacks and they, fictionalized a lot of these events for this movie just for shock, that's beside the point. James Wan directs his ass off in this movie. The characters are great in this movie. The stakes are there. The emotional impact, the acting, the score. There's genuinely moments in this movie that, like, you would not go, oh my god, they're setting up a scary scene. This is going to be so scary. But it's scary anyway. Think no further than all the photos falling off the wall in the middle of the night, which sent my entire theater, myself included, into a frenzy. Because James Wan is a master at taking the most simplistic, normal, blasé stuff and crafting a scare out of it. Not to mention a third act that is genuinely unsettling. Look, the movie is just a great movie. It is a great movie from start to finish, and it is why it birthed an entire universe that's made billions of dollars, and Warner Brothers and New Line seemed like they only want to focus on The Conjuring when it comes to horror. There's a reason for that. It's because this first movie is a great movie. Next up is one that isn't a horror movie, but that is Bohemian Rhapsody. Look, music biopics, they're hit or miss for me. They always have been. Some of them are way too over-dramatized, and there's a lot of things that are added into them for dramatic effect that are not true. Once you do your research and you're like, well, that's kind of lame. You kind of mischaracterized this person. This movie is great. And a lot of that is because Rami Malek is great in the role as Freddie Mercury. I'm a big Queen fan, so I'm a little biased there. But furthermore, it is a very accurate representation of Freddie Mercury's life. And you have a great actor giving a great performance. He owns it. He eats it up. He breathes Freddie Mercury in this movie. The movie is tragic. As great as it is to see Freddie and Queen reach the heights that they did and be so popular and to change the world in a lot of ways, it's heartbreaking to see Freddie be afraid to be himself and then end up getting sick and dying and just struggling with acceptance and love and being loved. There's just a lot about this movie that is so freaking powerful. And it is probably my favorite biopic of all time. But regardless, this is a great movie. Hands down, bar none, you can't argue it. And let's keep with the theme of non-horror films. The next up is Casino Royale. Now, I talked about Skyfall last time, and I know most people that have seen these movies will not quibble about Skyfall or Casino Royale. Most people will agree, yeah, those are both great movies, like they are. Even if James Bond's not your thing, action movies aren't your thing, that's not really the point. These are great movies. Look, this was the rebooted Bond, okay? The blonde Bond that everybody was freaking out about when it was announced. And then they saw this movie and they were like, okay, I'm on board. Like, I've never met somebody that said, oh, Casino Royale, man, that movie sucked. No, this movie is an all-timer. Like, it's top 100 movies of all time, probably. Like, by most critics' standards. I'm not even kidding you. It's that damn good. The action in this movie is kinetic. You're really getting this, like I said, in a rebooted Bond, you're fleshing out your new James Bond. You're getting to know him. He is very human. He's making a lot of mistakes. You're also learning what makes him tick. And all of that just adds to such a wonderful experience while watching this movie. Never mind the fact that Mads Mikkelsen is an incredibly great villain as Le Chiffre. I mean, this movie is incredible. Like, I don't have to say more about it. If you haven't seen the movie because you're not, I'm not a James Bond person. You don't have to be. Watch this movie. It is so damn good. Now, this next one might surprise some of you guys. Some of you have maybe never even heard of it or never seen it. That is Nightcrawler. Look, I streamed this movie one night years ago. I got off work. It was in the middle of the night. I was looking for something to watch, and I was like, okay, Nightcrawler, whatever. It got good reviews. Yeah, it deserved the reviews it got. This movie's incredible. Look, it's all about Jake Gyllenhaal's character wanting to, I don't know, get rich and be famous and really make a name for himself. And the drive that he has to do that and what he will do to achieve those goals. As the movie goes on, it gets more and more insane. And you can no longer sympathize with this guy. You just don't get him anymore. You see what he's doing, but like, you just can't back him. This movie, Jake Gyllenhaal alone carries this movie. His performance is incredible in this movie. He is a psychopath, like 100% psychopath. And not in the sense of that he's hacking people up left and right. No, because this movie is more of just like a thriller and a drama. It's not really a horror movie at all. But the drama and the thrills and the mystery and the suspense is so damn good in this movie. And just really watching the de-evolution of this human being into his search for fame and money and notoriety, just destroying him, changing him completely. Or was he that person all along? And this was just the vehicle to get from A to B. Who's to say? But the movie is incredible. And I implore you guys, if you haven't seen it, you have got to check this movie out. It is so damn good. Now let's switch it back to the horror a little bit more. And this is one that I don't think a lot of people will argue with, but I know it is a movie that is not for everyone. And I respect if you're like, yeah, it just didn't really do it for me. But for me, one of the best movies I own, It Follows. Look, It Follows is a great film solely in just the fact that it handles metaphors and symbolism incredibly well. And it takes a really good filmmaker and a good script to do that. A lot of these horror movies, especially nowadays, it's very surface level. You're really trying to, what is going to scare someone? What's going to get a reaction out of someone? This movie really makes you not even necessarily think, but you're looking at life. Like as a whole, and like decisions you make and how they could become mistakes and how those mistakes could follow you forever. And what are you going to do? How can you run from those mistakes? And you literally can't. And like the anxiety about this movie, I feel like that's the best word to describe this movie is anxiety. It is an anxious movie. You will feel anxious at a lot of points throughout this movie. There's not a lot of jump scares. There's not a lot that's going to gross you out or anything like that. No, but as a human being, like with empathy, and with fears, especially if you have anxiety, this movie's really going to strike you to your core. Never mention the fact that Disaster Piece's score is freaking top-notch. Maika Monroe is incredible in the lead role here. And oh yeah, David Robert Mitchell's directing is flawless, and it is shades of John Carpenter, and this movie is a total homage to late 70s, early 80s horror films. I need not go on. If you haven't seen this movie, what are you doing? It Follows is great. Now, this one may surprise some of you guys because I don't really know if I've ever really talked about this, but it is a great movie, and that is Split. Look, I've talked about M. Night Shyamalan before. When this guy is good, he is really, really, really good. Like all-timer good. When he's bad, he is really, really, really bad. And there doesn't seem to be this middle ground for him. There's a few exceptions. Glass is just a fine movie. But most of the time, you're on one end or the other when it comes to M. Night Shyamalan with his movies. And you go by movie. You know, it's not like his entire career. Because he's got movies that everybody agrees are great. And he's got movies that a lot of people agree suck. Split is one of those ones that everybody agrees is great. And part of that is simply just James McAvoy. The fact that this dude can cycle through 20 plus people and personalities and each of them are their own, truly their own, is insane. Like, this dude carries this movie with his performance. And I know Anya Taylor-Joy, she's really good in this movie too, but and she's your final girl technically, she's your focus, your protagonist, but like, you care about James McAvoy. Like, that's who you're interested in seeing. Every single time he is on the screen, it is just, he steals the show. Split is one of those movies. There's not a lot really about this movie that isn't pretty straightforward. It's not like your typical Shyamalan movie where it's like, oh, there's all these twists and these turns and unexpected. Like, no, it's pretty straightforward. But the movie is incredibly tense. It is a very good thriller, and it's just led by an incredible actor giving an all-timer performance. Like, this will probably be the role that James McAvoy will be remembered for forever. Like, I'm just saying it right now. Split is a great film. Last one I want to talk about tonight, guys. I didn't do it in the last one. I even think I mentioned something about it in the last one, but I didn't talk about it. And I looked at myself, and I thought to myself, and I said, how could I do that? It's time. It's time to do it. Dr. Sleep. Now, I'm not going to sit here and give you the argument of if it's better than The Shining, and if so, why, because I do believe it is. No, I'm simply saying this is a great film. And that's why I put it in this video, because it's one of the best movies I own. And that is simply just because, from a storytelling perspective, first off, it is a beautifully woven story. It's a great story. And a lot of that has to do with Mike Flanagan, because I've read the book. It is not as good as this movie. It is just not. 2, the actors and their performances in this movie, specifically Ewan McGregor, like all-timer shit. Now, I'm biased because Obi-Wan Kenobi is my guy, but Ewan McGregor is incredible in this movie. The characterizations and the arc of Danny Torrance is unparalleled. This kid went through so much, was so traumatized, struggled so mightily, fell into the deepest, darkest depths, the recesses of his mind, and got out of it. All for it to come right back. It's just a beautiful arc. It really, really is. But the most important reason why this is such a great movie, aside from the technical aspects, great filmmaking, great writing, great score, all of that, is that it is a sequel to what many revere as one of the greatest horror films of all time. And you will rarely, if ever, find somebody say bad things about this movie. It doesn't happen. Because everybody at least agrees, yeah, it's pretty good. No, it's better than pretty good. It's incredible. And the fact that you can make a sequel to that movie and you're not causing an uproar, you're not having people say, we didn't need this sequel, it's terrible, blah, 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 blah. That, in and of itself, is the biggest endorsement I can give for Dr. Sleep. If you have not seen this movie, what are you doing? Watch Dr. Sleep. And I actually would implore you, watch The Shining right before. First time I saw Dr. Sleep on opening night in the theater, the day before, I watched The Shining at home. And then I went and saw this the next day. And it enriches the experience so much. But it's one of the best movies I own, period. So that is part 2 of some of the best movies in my collection. I've done guilty pleasures. I've done worst. I've done best. I'm going to keep doing it. As long as you guys want to keep seeing it, I'm going to keep doing it. But I want to know down below in the comment section what you guys think of every movie I showed you tonight. Do you agree? Do you disagree? If so, why? Discuss it down below. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already. This is Nick. I thank you so much for stopping at the Lost River Drive-In, but I'm pulling out.